Hello everyone, how are you doing? My name is Ryan Kelly and I'm going to be hosting another episode of Know Your Bosses. Know Your Bosses, if you're not aware, is a show where I'll review some of the most classic bosses to the lesser known ones. I'll rank them based on their difficulty, creativity, appearance, and fighting style. In the end, the boss will get a ranking from 1, avoid the fight, to 10, pursue the fight. So now that I've quickly gone over the rules, we can talk about the boss we'll be fighting today. Today I'm going to be discussing location. The Rajang can appear in all sorts of different locations in a variety of games. The Rajang can be found in all the following locations: the Snowy Mountains, Old Volcano, Volcano, Gorge, Ancestral Steppe, Sunken Hollow, Volcanic Hollow, Frozen Seaway, Primal Forest, Everwood, Dunes, Jurassic Frontier, Sanctuary, Ingle Isles, Town, Battle Quarters, Tower 3, Desert, Sky Corridor, and Fortress Ruins. It can also appear in several different quests like Harvest Tours, Gathering Quests, quests where you just kill or capture it, and quests with other monsters. Boss information. The Rajang was first introduced into the Monster Hunter series in Monster Hunter Freedom 2, and since then has made appearances in games like Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, Monster Hunter 4 and 4 Ultimate, Monster Hunter Generations, and even Monster Hunter Stories. And since its introduction in Monster Hunter Freedom 2, it has grown to become one of the more popular monsters in the series, resulting in it getting more attention in future games. In fact, in Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, it got its own variant, being Furious Rajang. Like Savage Joe, Furious Rajang is a stronger and angrier version of a regular Rajang, meaning that it's always enraged and can do significantly more damage. However, the Furious Rajang is not the only monster related to the Rajang. In fact, the Rajang has quite a bit of relatives, being Vol'jang, the Kongalala family, the Blengongala family, Lola Gwarf, and Raygolarf. As you might know, the Rajang fights and looks very similar to a certain character from the Dragon Ball series, being Son Guko. In fact, there's an indirect reference of Goku's Uzaro form when you cut its tail. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then let me explain. When you cut Rajang's tail, it will no longer be able to get enraged, and Goku's Uzaro form, or more commonly known as Great Ape, has a very similar appearance to the regular Rajang. Also, just a disclaimer, I don't watch Dragon Ball, so I don't have a lot of knowledge on this bit of information. That aside, let's go back to talking about Rajang's tail. Many people might not know that Rajang was once considered to be an Elder Dragon. It was on par with Elder Dragons like Teotra and Lunastra. The reason that it was considered to be an Elder Dragon was due to its powerful Enrage mode. But where did it get this kind of power? Well, it's believed that all of Rajang's electrical power comes from its tail, because as I said before, once you cut Rajang's tail, it loses the ability to go Super Saiyan. I mean, become enraged. And finally, let's talk about Rajang's name, because it's actually pretty interesting. It shares the same name as the longest river in Malaysia. The Rajang River can be found on the Borneo Island, which interestingly enough has the largest population of primates, such as apes, orangutans, and chimpanzees. Is this where Rajang got its name from, or is this just some huge coincidence? Strategy. Before we get into the fight with Rajang, let's talk about a few things that you should bring with you. Well, for starters, Rajang is a powerful monster, so you should probably bring some buffs like demon drugs, armor skin, and mega energy drinks. Or if you have the ability Mushroom-mancer, like yours truly, you can bring parashrooms, which act like armor skins, nitro shrooms, which act like demon drugs, mope shrooms, which act like mega energy drinks, and dragon toadstools, which act like max potions. The next thing that you should bring is null berries. Whenever a monster can give you elemental damage, I always recommend to bring null berries. Another thing that I recommend bringing are bombs. This will help if you're trying to do a sleep run or if someone on your team has a sleep weapon. And the final thing that I would bring are traps. Rajang can get stuck in both shock and pitfall traps, but it can only get stuck in pitfall traps whenever it's enraged. I would recommend that you bring both types of traps and then bring supplies to make each of the traps, so that way you have double the number of traps. Also, keep in mind that Rajang is weak to ice, so bringing a weapon that has its element will do more damage. I believe that should cover all the things that you should bring with you. Now let's talk about the fight with Rajang. The Rajang has a lot of hard-hitting attacks that range from thunder beams to 360 spins. Its signature thunder beam attack is by far the deadliest attack it has. However, this attack can actually be pretty easy to avoid. This attack has a pretty obvious tell for when it's about to happen. Rajang will do this animation whenever it's about to use the thunder beam. It will also have a whistle sound to accompany it. If Rajang does this animation and there's no whistle sound with it, it will do a lightning ball attack instead. And finally, the beam is a straight line, so all you need to do is move to the left or the right of Rajang's body. The other attack that can be pretty deadly is its sonic ball attack. It will bounce around an area up to 3 times depending on what rank you're fighting it on. The best way to avoid this attack is not to roll out of the way, but to run away from it. Every time I roll away during this attack, I will usually always get hit with a second or third bounce. But I've almost never had this issue when I run from this attack. The best way to attack Rajang is to stay uncomfortably close to it. If you're using a blunt weapon that can KO, then I would recommend attacking its head. But be careful doing this because you're more likely to get hit when attacking the head. If you're using another weapon besides bow weapons, then I would recommend to attack its legs, torso, or tail. You don't want to stick to just one part of its body though, because you'll get punished for doing that. What I would do is to move closely around Rajang and attack what looks open. Try to stay as close to the Rajang as you can because it will get you the further away you are from it. If you're hugging Rajang and it's doing the beam attack, it is very easy to avoid. But if you're pretty far away from Rajang and it does the beam attack, it's going to be a lot harder to predict where it's going to be. And finally, I would recommend that you cut its tail as soon as you can to get rid of its enraged mode. Keep in mind that cutting the tail on a furious Rajang will not get rid of its enraged mode. So, if you've done everything I've said to do, then you should be able to kill the Rajang. Rewards. After taking Rajang down, you'll be able to make its armor and weapons. Rajang's weapons all use Thunder Element. These weapons focus more on elemental damage rather than blunt damage, and don't have great sharpness or affinity. I would definitely recommend making Rajang's weapons because you can turn them into Furious Rajang's weapons, which are some of my favorite thunder weapons in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. Furious Rajang's weapons have way better affinity, but just do a little bit less thunder damage, which to me is the perfect balance for a thunder weapon. The Rajang actually has more than one armor set, being the Grand Divine Ire armor, Grand God Pier's armor, and the Crusher's armor set. Out of the 3 armors I listed, the Grand Divine Ear armor and the Grand God's Pier armor are the Blade Master armors, and the Crusher armor is the Gunner armor set. The Grand Divine Ear armor has the abilities Insight +1, Fast Charge +1, Sense -1, and Sharpness +1. The Grand God Pier's armor has the abilities Thunder Attack +2, Challenger +2, and Latent Power +2. And finally, the Crusher armor set has the ability Insight +1, Sense +1, and Ammo Saver +1. Final thoughts. In this section of the video, I'll be talking about how the gameplay, design, difficulty, fun factor, and creativity weigh on my opinion of whether I think a boss is good or not. Anyway, now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's start this section. The Rajang has a reputation in the Monster Hunter series as being one of the strongest and hardest monsters to fight, and I believe that it deserves this reputation. Every time I fight the Rajang, I know that I'm going to have a hard time taking it down. It's fast on its feet and can hit like a truck. I have never gotten bored fighting a Rajang because the fight with it is different every time, because you never know how it's going to play out. Sometimes the Rajang will kick your ass without breaking a sweat, and other times your team will be able to take it out pretty easily. It all depends on how prepared you are. If you're a noob and just going in and spamming attacks hoping that you'll kill it, you will lose very quickly. But if you plan out your attacks and learn the way that Rajang works, then the fight will go more in your favor. And that is what makes Rajang such a good boss. The fact that you can't kill Rajang with luck. You have to learn how to fight it in order to win. This is something that I can't say is the case for some of the other monsters in Monster Hunter. Also, can we just take a moment to appreciate how amazing Rajang's design is? I've just gotta say that this is one of the most stylish monsters in the series. Not only that, but its animation for when it transforms into its enrage mode is probably one of the smoothest animations in the 3DS Monster Hunter games. Now, let's talk about what I don't like about Rajang. Well, honestly, I don't really have any issues with it. It isn't unfair, it is really hard, but it's supposed to be a challenge. It's put later on in the game on purpose so that you'll have a harder time fighting it. It's not just a monster that anyone can go and kill. You have to be skilled to take it down. It has a great design, and it's a really creative concept. So, with all this in mind, my final score for the Rajang is a 10 out of 10. Pursue the fight. So, what do you think about this boss? Do you think this boss deserves a higher or lower ranking? Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed this video or not. Also, make sure to click the like button if you liked the video and hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to support me, then you should consider checking out my Patreon. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Ryan Kelly, and I will see you in the next episode of Know Your Bosses.